To visit with the great Bernie Miklasz here on STL Sports Central. Of course, you can read his work and see his work every single day. Start off with the socials and then check us out on YouTube and check us out at STL Sports Central. And Bernie, you are still a prolific writer. You've always been a prolific writer, and you haven't slowed down, man.
I love to write. I got to admit, though, man, Randy, I used to be a lot faster when I wrote. So age has chipped away a little bit. Like, in other words, the final product's got all the stuff I want to have in it, but my gosh, it's like pulling teeth sometimes. It just takes forever. And part of that is me over researching everything too, so.
One of my favorite Bernie Miklasz stories, and when you were at the Post, they did a great book. I still have that book of your columns.
Thanks,
Tell
man.
the story of the column that you wrote the night of the earthquake in San Francisco in 1989. That's a great story.
Well, first of all, I'll try to be quick because it is a great story, not because I'm telling it, but a great story to having gone through something like that. Although for obvious reasons, I wish I wouldn't have, because I was really saddened by the devastation in the Bay Area, which was awful. So anyway, it's the night before Game 3 of the World Series. I'm out with Bruce Jenkins and Scott Price, a couple other writers, and we were at Lefty O'Doul's having a couple beers, and we were talking about how the first two games of the World Series were really boring because Oakland just kicked the Giants' tails in the first two games in Oakland. And we were talking about it, said, this is a really boring World Series. There's just nothing going on. And we were just saying, gosh, I hope something happens. I mean, because the A's are going to just roll over them. I mean, it's great. It's a Bay Area series, but there's just no action. There's nothing happening. It's boring. And we all raised a glass to that. Well, okay. Yeah. It was boring up until the time a few minutes before the first pitch, basically, where Candlestick Park started shaking with an earthquake. And I was in the upper deck in the auxiliary press box section, which is like not directly behind home plate, to the left, like down the third baseline, I would say. And I didn't know what it was at first. I do know I was holding onto my table and I was going like this.
Oh man.
And it sounds morbid now. I really thought I was going to die. A friend of mine from the Bay Area, Bob Podecki, columnist out there, I was like, what is that? What is that? And he says, it's an earthquake. And as soon as he said that, I thought, oh, I'm dead. We're all going to come down. So it was pretty scary. So anyway, I was able to talk to the office before all the phone service went down, and they said, you have to write a column. Even if you dictate it to us, you have to write a column. You got to do some reporting. So the problem is, it's easy to say, well, you can dictate it, because I could have dictated, but I didn't have phone access. An ABC affiliate offered to let me use a phone line that they had in their truck outside the stadium. I sat in my rental car and I wrote the column on my very little computer, but I had to get it in. So the ABC truck was really nice to extend that, that generosity. But by the time I got there and tried to do it, then they lost their phone line too. So I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to drive around until I, find a phone, And so I went I drove around, and I went into the Hunter's Point. I think that's the name of it, right, very close to Candlestick. It's kind of a rough neighborhood, to be frank. And there were some guys hanging out at the corner, and they're looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, what are you doing driving in here? So I said, listen, man, I'm a newspaper reporter from St. Louis, and I'm desperate. I got to write a story. I have to file a story about this earthquake. I don't have a phone. I said, but I do have $100. And if you guys can find me a house in here that's got a phone that's working, I'm happy to give you the $100. And that's basically all that I have. I may have had a little more. I wasn't lying, but I realized later I probably had a little more, maybe like 125.
Mhm.
So they were actually really, really cool. And they said, no, no. So they ran from house to house to house, knocking on doors. Need a phone, need a phone, need a phone. And they finally found one. And so I went in, and actually that's right about the money. See, I'm telling too long of a story.
This is great.
I had another $25 or $50 that I put aside. That's what I was going to do. Pay the guys $100 to find me a phone and also protect my car. And then I was going to tip whoever gave me a phone. I was going to take care of them too. So there was a family of just really wonderful people, actually, a Hispanic family or Latino family, and they had 2 kids, and as nice as could be. The phone worked beautifully. I thanked them profusely. They wouldn't take the money, but I made them take it. And so I wrote. I got my column in, and at the end of it, I was so just like relieved, and I just totally trying to decompress. Like I was so whacked out trying to with stress, trying to get this thing in. And so this sounds like I'm contradicting myself, because I said they were a nice family and they had kids, but the father said, he said, man, you look like you've been through hell. You need to relax. I said, hey, I do. And he said, you want some of this? And it was an illegal substance. It was a very strong illegal substance. It wasn't just like Jerry Garcia's weed or something. And I'm like, no. I said, man, that is so gracious of you. I said, no, but if you have a cold beer, I'd love a cold beer. And he had like a 6-pack of Budweiser Tall Boys in there. And so I drank two Tall Boys. It was the greatest beer I ever tasted. And we talked about the night. We talked about a lot of things. And it was actually a really pleasant experience, because I met these nice people, and I was also able to get this done, get that story in, which is, you got to get the story in.
Right. That's what this whole thing is about.
I didn't get mugged. I didn't get attacked. I didn't get robbed. My rental car was still there, fully protected. And that was the nicest family, you could have hoped to meet under that circumstance. So I make my way back to the Westin St. Francis, and I was like on the 17th floor. And of course there's no elevator. So they had people working at the hotel by candlelight, leading us up the stairs. And it was like something out of a Hitchcock movie or something. I mean, it was weird, man. It was eerie, because that's an ancient hotel. I mean, a great hotel, but ancient. So, I'm walking up those steps, and walking up the steps. There's candlelight everywhere, and there's people passing us in the dark. And I'm like, man, I got to get in a room and just collapse. I've had enough of this for one night. So, but that's what I did. And the next day, then they told me, so you got to go report on the earthquake. So I spent the next 3 or 4 days reporting on the earthquake. And the first story I did, and I'll end it with this. The first story I did, I went to the collapsed freeway on the Oakland side, and I noticed there was a dog, and it was a dog that was brought in, trained to find either people that were alive, actually people who were alive. They were trying to see if there were any survivors. And this dog was just a beautiful, beautiful dog, and so determined to go find someone alive. So they would send him or her in, and the dog would work its way under this collapsed freeway, searching for somebody alive. And the dog would come out maybe after 15 minutes, and the dog would come out, to get some water and all that. And I'm telling you, the dog you could tell the dog was very upset, because he or she couldn't find anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept sending the dog back in, and they kept sending the dog back in. They kept sending the dog back in. And every time the dog came out, was very distressed, very down. You could tell the handlers were saying, like, that's okay. Good dog, but the dog was like really sad, because he couldn't, or she couldn't come up with anyone alive in the rubble. And I wrote a whole column about that dog, because I thought this just kind of sums it up. The hopelessness, where the impact was the hardest, the hopelessness, the desperation, the despair. And yet, a dog kind of captured that for me. Just the scene was very powerful.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I went down to Santa Cruz. President Bush, George H.W. Bush was there. I listened to him. I went to a place that was a community center that a bunch of like 1960s era hippies had taken over and turned it into a commune. And they were eating and dancing and playing music and smoking stuff and having a great time. They loved it. They basically didn't have a home, so they had this great home now. They were having a party so anyway. So I went.
Hey, Bernie, you know what that taught me, and I'd never thought about it until then. And you did such magnificent work.
It's a long story, man. I apologize.
No, it's great because Al Michaels was unbelievable that night on ABC. But the one thing I thought of, and this is taking nothing away from the spectacular news reporters in history, but you can drop sports reporters into a news story and they can do great work. That doesn't necessarily work the other way. You can't drop a news reporter necessarily into a baseball or football or hockey game and have them do a great job. I think one thing I learned there is that as sports journalists, there's a lot more versatility because we're sports fans.
I think that's accurate, and it's nice of you to say it. It's nice of you to observe that, and I think that that's true because I had some other experiences, nothing like the earthquake. And I, in my own personal training, I don't know. I think you know this, but I don't know. I think a lot of people don't know this, and I'm not ashamed of it. I never graduated from college because my journalism training was in an actual newsroom in an old paper in Baltimore. And I was a kid that would do anything. I was 19, 20 years old, and I wanted to learn from all the grizzled veterans there. And that was my class. I learned from them I learned everything from them. I'd go to class at Maryland the next day or whatever, and I was bored to hell. I was like, I don't need to hear. No, I would sit there and say, no. What the professor's saying is totally wrong here. That's not how you do it. So anyway, I used to go out because this was a PM newspaper, and I'll be quick on this. I used to go out to crime scenes in Baltimore, basically murder scenes, like at 3, 4 in the morning with these seasoned, hardcore police reporters, right? And now those guys taught me how to go report on a story. Yeah. Where it ain't like a happy story with really nice people and to the worst part of town, dangerous part of town. There's bodies laying on the sidewalk. There's blood everywhere. And it's like, I would watch these guys and they would tell me, they would say, go talk to that guy over there. He could have saw something. So that was my education as a newspaper man, following these hard ass police reporters around Baltimore, like all night long, at violent crime scenes. Anyway,
that's the best training you could have ever gotten, though. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me go down memory lane.
Oh, no problem. We're going to talk about Eli Drinkwitz in a moment, but you need to know the DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming soon to Missouri, and new Missouri customers can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today. And when they do go live, you place a $5 bet to unlock $300 in bonus bets. When, you ask? Starting November 17th. That's when you can create your DraftKings Sportsbook account in Missouri and get ready for launch day on December 1st. You'll get live in-game betting. You'll get lightning fast payouts. You'll get endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone, and it'll change the way that you watch sports. And when DraftKings officially does go live in Missouri, you're going to be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions. It's safe, it's secure, and has fast money withdrawals. All you need to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when they go live on December 1st in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. All
right, Bernie, we had quite a conversation, Matthew Rocchio and I, during the week about the comments that Eli Drinkwitz made on his Tiger Talk show with our buddy Mike Kelly on Monday night. And here's exactly what Eli said. He said, quote, "We got to get out of this, oh man, it's playoffs or bust. Yes, again, we're shooting for the moon. We're going to put our whole self into that, but only 12 teams make the playoff. And we put ourselves in position in November to be there. Didn't get it done. I got that. But if the season only counts for 12 football teams and we got 127 D1 football teams, that math's not going to math very well. That math's not going to math very well at all. Okay. Football is more than just the playoff potential. And again, we were there. We didn't get it done. But, there's a whole heck of a lot to be proud of. There's a whole heck of a lot to play for. Now, I am not one of the people, and I think anybody who's watched me or heard me on STL Sports Central or seen me on The Fight on Matrix Midwest, they know how I feel. I'm not interested in Eli Drinkwitz being relieved of his duties because he hasn't beaten teams yet that don't have, or that he hadn't beaten a team with a winning record or hasn't beaten ranked teams, all of that stuff. But it is interesting that the teams that have fired coaches, the Floridas of the world, the Auburns of the world, maybe they're a little bit misguided. The Arkansas of the world, we know they're delusional. LSU, those teams that are upset because they didn't make the playoffs. I wonder how the people that are hiring take comments like that from Eli Drinkwitz.
I told you before we started to record, that's a great, great question. I mean, if I'm an athletic director or I'm the money people, it would give me a little pause.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't think that, well, see, this guy wants to rationalize his own failure or whatever. I wouldn't think that. What I would think is that, well, wait a minute, we just fired a guy who couldn't get a team over the top and had a lot of this definitely applies to Penn State and LSU. We couldn't, where they got to a certain level and then that was it. And they won a lot of games, but they didn't win the games. And how do you sell that to your fan base? How do you sell that to your big money people? Well, wait a minute. This guy's making excuses and rationalizing and lecturing us about there's more about a college football program than just beating top 10 teams and all that. He didn't say that literally, but
No.
he was talking about getting to the playoff, but along those lines, I don't think that would play well with, but college football is nuts now. We all know that. And fans and media are incredibly demanding and very hard to please, more than it ever used to be.
Yep.
Right?
And Auburn is, would you agree, kind of delusional at this stage? I don't think they realize where their place in college football is, even though they did go to a championship game in 13. They won a championship game in 10. That's 12 years ago that they went. That's a long time. Arkansas has been mediocre for a long time. I think both at this stage, Auburn and Arkansas should be happy with what Eli Drinkwitz has brought for the last couple of years to Missouri. I get it. And he can't say those things at LSU or at Penn State, but he also knows that it's a different situation because those programs have won championships. I think he understands the ceiling and the potential of Mizzou at the moment. The potential of Mizzou at the moment isn't what the potential of either Penn State or LSU is. Those schools, one of them, Penn State, was just 4 quarters away from the national championship game last year. LSU won a championship 6 years ago. So the potential is there. You don't say that about those programs. But I do think that, and I hate to use the word delusional, but I will. I think people that thought that Mizzou was going to win a national championship this year were a little bit delusional. I thought they had a chance to make the playoffs, certainly not with their third quarterback and certainly not with a starting freshman quarterback against the number 3 team in the nation, which is where they are right now. I thought they had a chance. But I also think that this journey of Mizzou becoming a really good program is not something that's going to happen right now. This is a situation where it's not going to be like it was in Indiana, which is an unbelievable exception. It's not going to be an event. Mizzou getting to where they want to go and realizing the potential of the program and the market, that's going to still be a process. It's not a finished product yet.
No, it's a really interesting situation because where I kind of draw the line with Coach Drink is that I have no problem, and you don't either, when we express disappointment because they had an opportunity and they failed at it. And a couple of those games they could have won. They could have beaten Alabama. They certainly could have beaten Vandy, even with Zollers coming in late because he played pretty well. And I think it's perfectly fine to say, you know what? Gosh, they had that opportunity and they let it slip away. This was a great time for them to, achieve their dreams, and they couldn't do it. I think it's fine to express your frustration, but I draw the line at somehow this should mean that they've got to move on and find someone who can get them over that last hurdle. Because Randy, I don't have to tell you, my dear friend, because you've been around these woods a lot longer than I have, but I did do my numbers, and I'm not going to read you the numbers, but I wanted to find out, so I went back to Dan Devine. I mean, he had a losing record against ranked teams. He was 3-14 against top 10 teams. Dan Devine. Frio had a couple of really memorable upsets, but he had a losing record against ranked teams and a losing record against top 10 teams. Gary Pinkel, frankly, who the man that I revere, he had a terrible record against ranked teams, top 10 teams. All right. And Eli Drinkwitz, his first few years, nothing going on. It's been a little better until recently. But my point is, if Mizzou fans who are demanding the moon, the stars, the sun in terms of this program right now, if their conclusion is that Eli Drinkwitz is a failure and he is not capable of doing this, well, then the same thing applies. You'd have to go back and say, well, same thing was true about Dan Devine, I guess, Frio and Gary Pinkel. In other words, this has been a Mizzou problem for a long time, despite the fact that some really outstanding coaches have taken a whack at it. They can push it up the hill so far. And Drink has done a great job of pushing it up the hill a long way, and of raising money and of building a true program and everything that comes with it, including enthusiasm. But Mizzou is in that perpetual, what's the word, man? You can help me out here. I'm not going to call them like middle ground. They're better than middle ground, but there's a pretty elite club at the top, and they can't get entrance into that club. And they've been trying since the 60s. And what happens in the 12-team playoff, it does provide more of an opportunity. So people will hold that against Drink. Well, but Dan Devine didn't have that kind of opportunity. Yeah, Ana Frio didn't, and Pinkel did. Okay, point well taken. But I think what really, you mentioned it, what really works against, what really hurts him now is that people look to Indiana, which isn't that far from here. And, Cignetti did it, so why can't you do it? I mean, I understand the question. I do. But I think Eli Drinkwitz has done a heck of a job. I would be really disappointed if he left. And I know that based on your reporting that they've got everything lined up to do what it takes to keep him there. And that's great reporting by you. But I don't think he helped himself. If he really wants one of these big jobs, I don't think he helped himself with those remarks.
I agree.
But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's his way of, in a way, saying, well, if you think like, if I come there and don't win a national championship or get in a playoff right away, if that means you're all going to start coming after me at Penn State or LSU or wherever, I'm not really interested in that. And listen, he's not afraid of a challenge.
Oh no. And Bernie, I go back, you and I were doing a show at 1380 in 2006 when Mizzou got off to a 7-1 start. And they lost 3 in a row. They lose to Oklahoma. They lose to Nebraska, lose to Iowa State. And I remember distinctly people calling in and saying that Gary Pinkel had to be fired because they hadn't made enough progress. And then the next year they wind up going to the Big 12 championship game and the year after that. And by the way, that was 06, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was his 6th year. And people were calling for the head of Gary Pinkel. And then the next year, things are going great. Actually, you could argue that Eli is ahead of Gary Pinkel's schedule when Gary got things going there. And like I said, I just think that it's going to take a little bit more time. I'm willing to be a little bit more patient because I think that, and I mentioned this yesterday, the chances of things turning bad are a hell of a lot higher than the things turning better if you're going to get Drink out of here and get somebody else in.
And I would have, I have a lot of respect for him. And like I say, just because I find fault with a coaching decision or frustrated that they couldn't beat Alabama, that's okay. I mean, that's okay. That's part of being a fan. It's also part of being someone who, writes about or talks about these teams. It's okay to express your disappointment and frustration. But but the idea they would be better off by, basically telling Coach Drink, well, if you got an offer, maybe it's best that you move on. That's just insanity. Now, and this is what the problem is. Some fans, again, will look to Indiana and say, well, look, you just got to hire the right guy. All right. So you want to run Drink off, but because you can find somebody better. Okay, well, tell me who that is and tell me where you find that needle in a haystack. Indiana did, good for them, right? But it's not like it's easy to do that. It's still a really hard thing to do, to find a guy who can create a minor or maybe even a major football miracle. It does, people act like, well, we can do that too. Well, if everybody can do that, how come, who else has done it besides Indiana?
That's the question I'm asking.
And Vandy to an extent has, and look, he's an alum of the school. They also got lightning in a bottle with Diego Pavia. But I understand why people would be frustrated that Vandy's moved ahead of Mizzou, so to speak. But listen, the other coaches get paid a lot of money too, and they're going to do things to improve their programs, and there's going to be years where they're better than you. Yeah, but this idea, it's like, well, look, if Indiana can do it, we can do it. Okay, go tell me who the coach is going to be, and give me the guarantee that he'll be better than Drinkwitz. Here's the problem: you can't do that.
Pretty simple. Bernie, let's talk a little baseball. Paul Skeens wins the National League Cy Young. Tarek Skubal, no surprise, wins the American League Cy Young. And as I'm thinking about these guys, and I know Skubal is 28, but he's been historically good the last 2 years. Skeens has been even more historically good in his first 2 years in Major League Baseball. Do you think we're kind of seeing, comparable to where we are in the history of the sport, kind of a new golden age of starting pitching with guys like this?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I mean, the absolute talent level. Now, there's some things that can't match it. Guys pitching. When came watch today, we were talking to Jim Cott. He had one season where he pitched 304 innings.
Mm-hmm.
Had a bunch of 250 inning seasons. Like those days aren't coming back. But in terms of just pitching excellence, like when you're in the game, when you throw your 6 innings or your 7 innings, how great are you?
We're seeing a
lot of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not just Skeens, but Christopher Sanchez, relatively young, a relative newcomer to greatness. Yamamoto, who threw a couple of complete games in the postseason and did what he did in Game 7. Logan Webb, who's in his late 20s, but is still a terrific pitcher. And then in the American League, Skubal, Garrett Crochet in his first real full year of starting, finished second in the American League. Hunter Brown was the best pitcher in baseball for a while with Houston during the course of the season. Brian Wu had an historic season. He did some amazing things. So it just seems like there's some young pitching coming along. And that's why I say relative to where we are in the history of the sport, because we aren't going to see guys throw 300 innings.
Right.
But relative to the last couple of years when it's been Kershaw and Cole and it's been an older group, it seems like we've got a young, really impressive group of pitchers.
Yeah, and Corbin Burns, who will be back, he's somewhere in the middle because he's not young, but he's not old either.
Right.
He's another guy. No, it's kind of frustrating because you want the Cardinals to have a couple of those guys, but they're working on it, with Liam Doyle and others. The other kid they drafted from Tennessee.
Matthews.
Yeah. No,
right.
I forget his name. Quinn Matthews is definitely, his stock is still good. The kid they drafted I forget what round it is.
Second round this year. It was in the second round. Yeah, I'll get the name. But what I was told is that he, if he wouldn't have gone to Tennessee and if he would have had a better opportunity to pitch more, then he would have been a number 1 pick, a first round pick. So that's the kind of thing that the Cardinals hopefully have, at least from a talent standpoint. And
Tanner Franklin, he throws 105.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And Baseball America came out with their updated top 10 Cardinals prospect list. He's their 6th best prospect already, and they just drafted him.
Loaded with talent.
Right. So the Cardinals have some guys on the vine for sure. But no, I agree with your point. I think there's some great pitching out there, but we can't hold them to the standards of the 1960s or 70s or, it's because it's just dramatically changed as far as well, you got to pitch 250 innings or whatever. It just doesn't, it ain't going to happen anymore.
No. And so hopefully the Cardinals will get some young guys going. And I hope, I really loved, did you see what Paul Skeens said when that rumor about the Yankees came out? He said, hey, I'm a Pirate. I want to be a Pirate. I want to win a championship with a Pirate. Number one, if I'm a Pirates fan, one of them, I would love what he said, but I like to see a young guy that he actively disputed what the story said and said, no, I want to win here. I want to win in Pittsburgh. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I hope they're going to spend more money this offseason. But when I read the story and got into some of the details, I don't think it's going to be enough to move the needle, the Pirates. But you would just, the owner there, how can you have a gold mine potentially like a Paul Skeens? And plus they have some other really good pitching. Mm-hmm. And how could you not give Paul Skeens a chance to win? No one's saying you have to spend $500 million. No one's saying you have to spend $200 million. But what you need an offense. Can you just go get some offense and spend some money? That's what's so frustrating about a lot of owners in Major League Baseball. There's too many guys like that. And by the way, Bill DeWitt's not one of them. But
Mm-hmm. Well, Bob Nutting was never going to go do a Goldschmidt or Arenado trade or, whatever the Cardinals have done in the past, even signing some of the lower level free agents. The Pirates haven't even done a good job of that over the years. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. It's anybody who really, that they're pocketing the revenue sharing, and Nutting is that guy. The Marlins historically have been that team. It'd be nice to have those guys actually spend their money on players. But one time, I was actually talking to a Cardinal executive about the Pirates specifically. And I said, doesn't it bother you that you guys are paying into revenue sharing and the Pirates are getting revenue sharing, but they aren't spending any of it on players? And they said, it bothers me. And I said, but you're also buying wins, right? You're basically, when you're paying into revenue sharing for the Pirates and they aren't spending money, you pay them, you're playing them 18, 19 times a year. You're beating them 12 or 13. You're buying wins.
That's right. It's a good way to put it.
We didn't get a disagreement from that. So it didn't bother the Cardinals as much because they wanted to win and they were competitive.
Yeah, this is related, if you don't mind me throwing this in here, because I was, Derek Gould reported, that the Guardians and the Royals have reached out about Brendan Donovan. And I was looking at what Cleveland has, because I'm thinking if they trade Donovan, I hope they get a pitcher out of it. A good pitcher. And I tell you what, the Guardians are a really good match in a trade like that, in theory. I was looking at their guys, Gavin Williams, a guy who was a 23rd overall pick. He's only got 2.6 years of service time. Tanner Bybee, who was drafted about 150th, but he's got 3 years of service time. Logan Allen, he was a 33rd overall pick. He has got a little over 2 years of service time. They have a guy, Parker Messick, who was drafted really like in the top 50 his year. He's got less than a year of service time. They got a pitcher from Arizona who's got a little more. He got about a year and a half of service time. He was the 33rd overall pick. And there are others behind them. The point being, they have a pool, I should say. They have tools too, but they have a really good pool of young, talented, cost-controlled starters with other young starters behind them. And that's Chaim Bloom. Yeah, I would expect he's going to plug in some veteran that they can get, for 1 year or whatever. But he really wants to add a more elite type of pitcher, but someone who's under club control for 3 seasons or so, So I actually think the Guardians are a great match if we're talking about a trade like that.
And who knows the Guardians' minor league talent better than Rob Cerfolio and Larry Day?
Thank you.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, you finished it off. That's right.
Yeah.
And listen, the Royals have some guys, but they're not like Cleveland's crop.
No, and the other team that I'm looking at, and I know that they showed interest in Donovan in the past, is the Dodgers. And I know Rojas hit the home run to tie the World Series or the game in the World Series, but Brendan Donovan is kind of like the quintessential Dodgers player, and they have young pitching depth too. The thing is, though, Bernie, it's kind of like you remember when the Rams traded they traded Troy Drayton for Billy Milner, and I asked Steve Ortmeyer, said, Are you concerned that Jimmy Johnson wants one of your guys and you're getting a guy from Jimmy Johnson that he doesn't want? And Uncle Ort said, oh, this is going to be different. This is going to change. Well,
Oh, sure.
I think Billy Miller might have played one game. I'm concerned about anybody that the Dodgers don't want, and I'm concerned about them wanting one of my guys.
No, it's funny you say that because I remember when they traded Michael Busch to the Cubs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I said, well, this guy's been great at AAA. And I don't know. It's just unusual for the Dodgers to give up a talent like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he may not amount to as much, and actually we would all agree Michael Busch has been really, really good for the Cubs, right?
Yeah.
So you start to think, well, how did the Cubs pull that off? I was reading a thing about the Dodgers outlook, and one of the kids that they got in that trade for Michael Busch is now like someone moving way up on the charts. Like he is a very hot prospect that other teams are like going, wow, this guy has got every tool. He is going to be phenomenal. Andrew Friedman, for whatever mistakes they made, they're always 4 or 5 moves ahead of most teams,
They're
aren't
amazing.
they?
They're great. They're great.
Yeah.
All right, Bernie, before we wrap up, I was
sir.
on with Mike Claiborne yesterday, and it turned into story time. And I asked him if he was with us. In 1987, we were pretty sure that the football Cardinals were going to leave, and they played a preseason game in Memphis against the Chiefs. Right. And you and I were covering that game. I was producing for radio. You were the beat writer for the Post-Dispatch, and we're hanging out. I think it was the night before the game, right? Because it was at the Liberty Bowl.
Right.
So we're at the Peabody Hotel, and we're just sitting at the bar enjoying a cold one, and we're watching the band. And you are more of a music file than me, and you knew exactly who we were watching, and then who showed up. I want you to extend this story for me.
Well, one of the reasons I think we all headed over to the Peabody, which is a great classic hotel, first of all, but their house band was Donald Duck Dunn and the Coolers. Duck Dunn, who's one of the legendary. Was he a bassist? I can't remember. I should know that. But
he was in the Blues Brothers movie. Yeah, bassist.
Yeah, legendary bassist, and of course got a lot of fame from being in the Blues Brothers. And I think maybe one other guy in his band was also in the Blues Brothers, but they were very popular in Memphis because Donald Duck Dunn, born and raised and developed in Memphis. So anyway, they're the house band. And I remember, you and I and some others were like, it's pretty cool to listen to them play. And Donald Duck Dunn, what a likable guy. This is really good. This is great stuff. Well, as it turns out, there was a musician in town to record an album. And he heard about Duck Dunn and those guys holding court. And so George Thorogood, he showed up with a couple of his guys, and they jumped on stage and started playing. Brian Adams, who was huge at the time.
Yeah.
He was actually playing to a sold out concert that night. I don't know, there was a Pyramid or whatever arena that was.
Yeah.
So he heard about it, or he got a call and said, hey, these guys are jamming. You got to go over there. So Brian Adams, again, he was huge at the time. He shows up. Joe Walsh was living in Memphis of the Eagles fame, and, just great. He was living in Memphis. So somebody called him up and said, you got to get your ass down here. This is like a great jam session going on. So all of a sudden you look up and it's not just, Donald Duck Dunn and the Coolers, you got Brian Walsh, one of the top 2 or 3 most famous rockers in the world at that time. And you got George Thorogood and you got Joe Walsh,
and they're unbelievable,
just having a great time. And I don't know if you remember how it ended. Joe Walsh would not leave. He was playing his guitar. He was doing solos, right? Yeah. And I don't think Joe wasn't feeling any pain whatsoever, but he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't get off. They kept saying, look, we got to go. It's beyond curfew. We're supposed to be closed. And he wouldn't leave. And so they finally had to unplug him. Somebody walked up and just pulled the power on him and unplugged him and just said, you got to leave, Joe. And he's trying to plug it back in, and they gently escorted him out. I love that. They had to unplug the man. He wanted to play the guitar all night.
And we were there for the whole time, and we were watching this unfold. It was unbelievable.
It was a great memory from the road.
It really was.
That's why I used to love the road a lot, because you never know what would happen. There's stuff like that can happen. It's just like serendipity or whatever.
Yeah.
Right place, right time. That was great. That was a fun night.
It was a fun night. Bernie, you're always fun. I always enjoy this. We have a great time, and I can't wait to do it again next week.
Randy, the best to you. Have a great weekend. A lot of great college football this weekend. So we'll and then the Chiefs and the Broncos. That's a hell of a game. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And Seahawks and Rams too.
Yeah, and they are both great.
Yeah.
That's a great showdown. Yeah.
2 great games this weekend.
Well, you enjoy it all. You enjoy it all, and we'll do this again next week.
All right, my man. Love you. See you later. Take care.
Love you, baby. See you, buddy. Thank you.
That is Bernard J. Miklasz, and thank you for being with us here on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours.